Hello, everyone. Welcome to May. That's right, May. You heard it here. Maybe not first. We are now in the 5th month of 2022. And just like that, I thought it was like November and December of 21. So that whole year and a half, that just disappeared off the calendar. No, it actually happened. I'm sorry you didn't dream it. We are now in May of 2022. But still a lot of 2022 ahead of us, which is great. I'll go through some housekeeping. I'll introduce my guest for today, and we'll talk. We'll see what's happening out in the world. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. So MSPinitiative.com, you'll have sessions. This and every session we've ever recorded will be there, in both the podcast and video format. We haven't yet announced our 3 upcoming MSP community block parties. I assure you, planning is well underway. We'll get those out there soon, so keep an eye out for that. Our giveaways hopefully will be up online shortly. Our vendors from throwing out some free giveaways for people who raise their hand. And then lastly, the Channel Strong Tour, which we just completed our Western PA and Ohio, and the next one coming up here in 2 weeks is kind of Midwest, right? So Chicago, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Indianapolis, Lexington, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee. So if you're interested in joining us, or you're an MSP that's in that area or wants to travel to that area, go to MSPinitiative.com, click on Channel Strong, scroll down, and put your name in. Okay, and you'll see we've put not just this upcoming tour, but the one. All of our tours are listed for the whole year. The one after that, here in May, will be in June, right? We'll be going into Virginia, Maryland, New Jersey, Philly. So definitely keep an eye out for us. And if you're in those areas, channelstrongtour.com, put your name in, and we'd love to see you there if you're an MSP. So without further ado, I would like to bring Jason Comstock on. Jason from Clarity Technology Solutions out of Columbus area was willing to host us on this last tour for Channel Strong as we were driving around Pennsylvania and Ohio. And we'd like to thank you again for helping us out there. It's always interesting trying to, find people who, number one, have parking lot space that we can park a bus in and a race car and a trailer, but also people who are willing to, make this all happen. I know it's a little bit disruptive to your business for that afternoon, but, it sounds like your team had a great time, Jason.
They had a great time. They're still talking about it. Of course, they'll talk some smack as some different pictures come up through the course of it. Just came across one that was Ken and Owen, one of my techs, sitting there playing cornhole. And we're wondering, well, what was Ken saying at the moment that picture was snapped? But yeah, we were thrilled to have you. Weather in the morning, it's Ohio. The weather change in 5 minutes, and then we see what happens. It was ugly in the morning. It was beautiful in the afternoon. So it all worked out really well.
100%. Actually, Pete, I've unmuted all of you, so you guys will be able to jump into the conversation as we proceed through this hour. Pete, if you're in front of a computer, feel free to join in. I promoted you up. So Pete from Equilibrium is actually somebody that works with Jason. Pete's company helps us with a lot of the marketing efforts around Channel Strong. We banged up his race car, not on purpose. So sorry about that, Pete. I profusely apologize, but we banged up his very nice Nissan race car there on the last tour, and hopefully it wasn't too bad because we kept on using it for the rest of the week. You're muted if you want to unmute there, Pete.
I mean, I just dropped the trailer off, so the trailer should be repaired by Friday, and the car goes in for evaluation tomorrow, but it's not going to be repaired. So week 3, we're getting the same old banged up car.
That's okay. There's a little bit of
trailer, right?
Huh?
You're getting that fixed up trailer there?
Yeah, the trailer's easy to fix. The car, not so much. So it's going to take a little bit more. But when we come back from week 3, we should be able to drop it off. And when we go to week 4, we should be back in full.
So Pete, what kind of car is this?
It's a Nissan GTR.
And for what kind of racing? Is this NASCAR? Is it what?
No, road racing.
Road racing.
SCCA road. Yep. So,
Yeah, Pete likes to do a little version of Gone in 60 Seconds or Fast and Furious, whichever you prefer. Yeah, he likes to race his car around, but usually on tracks, right, Pete?
yeah, that's usually the best place to do it.
Yeah,
So,
the most
Yeah,
legal
the
place to
sheriff
do it.
of course, in my other car, I did find the only place that had a wall on the track to take it into the wall and put it out of commission for the last 4 years, 5 years. So,
Yeah,
but
no,
it will return. It might make a Channel Strong tour near end year or somewhere else.
here you go. I found the photo just so people know what it looks like. Pete's team did a great marketing job on it. So they put all the hosts logos and vendor sponsor
And it
logos.
doesn't have any dents on it.
Oh, that's
It's-
sharp looking.
It's
Oh, it
hard.
does. You just can't see them.
It's hard to
but-
see, but it's there. I can see it right there. But that's okay.
Yeah, down
Down the wheel well there, right in front of the rear wheel.
Right
Yep.
there. Yeah. Where's Waldo?
Is that a
There it
Beautiful.
PAX 8 logo I see?
Yes. Yes. PAX 8 is there. I see it right there. Can't miss.
So that's a pretty high performing car in general. Is this tuned up on top of that?
It is. It's 700 horsepower all-wheel drive. So it's
Wow.
700 horsepower to every wheel.
And
What kind of engine do you have in that?
What's that?
What kind of
Kinda
an engine do you have in that?
I'm saying that again, please.
The engine, what kind of an engine do you have in it?
It's a Nissan engine. We haven't done any, the beautiful thing about that JDM product, that Japanese domestic, is you really don't have to replace until you hit about 800 horsepower, the internals.
So is it a
So-
6 or an 8?
It's a 6. It's a
Wow.
twin turbo 6. So,
I can assure you when he takes people for a ride down the street, it definitely is noticeable. It's not a quiet car. Actually, we had to go grab some ice and a couple other things the one time. Actually, I think it may have been for Jason's stop. I think we ran down the street and I was like, this is not a car that you take down to the supermarket.
This is not your daily driver.
Yeah, not a good car to take.
I do. Why not?
Everyone's like, what the hell's going on here? I think, what was it? I think at not this round, but at Bob Koppich's place, I think somebody complained, right?
Oh, last year. Yeah,
Yeah.
last year Bob's got maybe a 100 foot stretch that you can just stomp it and then stomp on the brake basically. And
Yeah.
I think the woman next door said that there was a black Mustang doing quarter-mile pulls in the parking lot. And so the officer came over and asked whose car it was, and I gently said it was mine, and he said, well, this definitely isn't a Mustang, and that definitely isn't a quarter mile. So
Yeah,
Yeah, yes, sir.
for sure. But hey, what are you gonna do? You
Yep.
just gotta keep on that's why we put it in the trailer, right? We're not driving that thing on the highway.
well, we did the one year. We did last year. I drove up to Grand Rapids and drove it down and around.
Jeez.
I decided that that was too much, at $450 a tire. That kind of mileage will 2,000 miles on a non-street tire will go away real quick.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, anyway, let's get in some current events as we continue to have fun. If you happen to find yourself at a Channel Strong, you may be able to take Pete's car out for a spin, maybe.
go for a ride at least.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
So Jason, and Pete and everyone else, right? Everybody should be unmuted if they want to chime in. So Michael Dell, that's right, our famous Michael Dell. You can't miss him. He's been around for a long time. Actually had a Dell World in person, 5,000 attendees, and Mr. Dell here at Dell World said that the on-prem versus cloud debate is over. I said, oh yeah, who won? Because last time you talked, you said that on-prem is better than cloud. Now you say multi-cloud is the answer. Multi-deployment is the answer. By the way, I think that was always really the answer. But I digress. And he said that 10% in 2022 of all computing is done outside of the data center as we know it today. But in 2025, 3 years from now, 75% of computing will be done outside of the traditional data center as we know it today. Public cloud, private cloud, whatever. So what say you? Do you agree with that? Do you agree? Number one, do you agree that the debate is over? And number two, what do you think about that shift in computing from the data center to the edge, they like to say?
Well, I guess I would say being in this industry for a while, because I started out working for CompuServe, and it was all about in the CompuServe cloud at the time for time sharing and everything else that happened. Then it moved to the desktops and the data centers and the businesses, and now it's moving back. So, okay, maybe this point in time, yes, is that a permanent thing? I don't think so. I see clients' needs changing, how they consume technology need changing, and in 3 years, we may be having a different discussion.
It's really interesting because Dell wins either way, right? They're selling equipment, infrastructure, servers to the data center guys. They're selling the same to the actual companies out there. And it seems like, the big push he was making from reading his quotes here was that 5G is going to be one of the big game changers, because effectively you're going to be able to have high speed connectivity practically anywhere, right? Low latency, high speed connectivity. And that's why he's saying that, because of that, that's going to be one of the drivers over the next 3 years that will push a lot of computing out of the data center, because now you're going to be able to run high capacity things from anywhere. And I don't know. I mean, listen, we keep on hearing the promise of 5G. I really like to call it fake 5G, because like everybody's phone one day went from 4G to 5G overnight, and then it just said, okay, like what changed, right? Because it's still the same speed. And like, unless you're in like very specific pockets, you don't really feel that difference in the high speed capacity of what 5G is supposed to be. But I mean, apparently this is like the next 3 years is like this thing's finally going to wake up. And, they're saying, hey, why do you need your computing to be all in one place? You can distribute it.
You mean it wasn't just a software update that allows the light to be lit when they want to light it, and just say that you have 5G, but it's still really 4?
I thought the software update just like changed the logo at the top of the phone. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Move the buttons in all different places. Well, here, so George, something to share with you that came to mind as you're talking about 5G. So I don't know remember we had talked a little bit about the automotive corridor that goes right along the backside of our building.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much is happening in your neck of the woods. It's just a major companies around you.
Oh, with all the automotive research, and then you add Intel dropping a chip plant in Ohio. Yeah, big deal. But that whole automotive corridor, initially it was starting out on a standard called DSRC, and it was competing with 5G. Well, the FCC came out with a ruling several months ago to basically say the mode going forward for connected vehicles is 5G. So what that means is over time, as you start to see these onboard integrations, you're going to have the vehicle to vehicle communication and the vehicle to infrastructure communication. And that's all going to be 5G driven. So it'll be interesting to see how that footprint plays out.
Yeah, I'm like, I still don't see the business. I mean, this is me, right? I mean, and we all consult with businesses of various sizes, but I prefer the wire than I prefer the signal. I just feel like the wire's less adverse to something that's going to affect, all of the things that make internet unstable. I was reading an article earlier today from PRTG, the company that manufactures PRTG, which is like a monitoring platform, software, probes, stuff like that. And they were monitoring 3 different satellite internet services, one being Starlink. I know Pete loves his little Starlink there. I hope you got your bracket, pal.
Got it yesterday.
Now you got to put it up, right?
Jason saw my bracket.
Oh yeah, it was very impressive.
So
Sounds dirty.
He was monitoring these 3 services, these 3 satellite internet services over time, right? It's always great when you're using it in time, but how does it perform over a period of time? So, the only complaint he said was that the latency, depending on certain times, could spike up, right? Which obviously, latency for many reasons is a bad thing, especially once you get to a certain point. And that was the only thing he said. He's like, the speeds kind of held, but the latency fluctuated as these satellites were rotating around the planet. And I still think that if you could get fiber to your building, why not continue fiber, which technically has an unlimited upgradability, right? I mean, the wire is not limiting you, on the fiber side versus the signal. Other than I understand backup, but we're not talking about backup. We're talking about your primary connectivity. Do you really feel in 3 years you would recommend to your customer, oh yeah, do this?
Well, if wired connections, so be it cable or fiber, is available to our clients, that's what we're going to drive them to. Now, we serve clients that are in more of a rural part of Ohio. Bandwidth gets a little limited as to what you can do. Sometimes you feel lucky if you can get DSL. Thankfully, we're getting past that. But if it's a choice of fiber first and then cable, and then if we have to go satellite, we would take a look at Starlink as an option for them, but it's going to be in that order, and it's going to be based on what's available in their given space.
Fair enough. I mean, listen, if you don't have it, you don't have it, right? I mean, but if at the end of the day, I mean, I'm in a lucky part, right? I'm in this Northeast corridor here, like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, all that, whatever. And we have multiple broadband providers, fiber to the building, right? So you kind of super lucky, right? But I get it. Not everybody's in there. Another one that literally just hit my mailbox just now, share, is Mimecast, right? Major provider of email, security and continuity. I guess went down today. Hadn't been following all the feeds, but I got this morning, so it hit our friends over at CRN, and just like we were talking about the data center, right? So it looks like they had a major power outage in the data center, and I'm like, okay, I thought the data center is supposed to have backup power and generators and all this stuff. So, hate to hear a major power outage shut down an entire facility, but I mean, this happens, right? I mean, Amazon's gone down a lot of times in the end of 2021, going into 2022 in different regions, AWS, so Amazon, AWS, and then Azure, right? Different people have different problems at different times. I think at this point it's an expectation, right?
So George, the power outage didn't happen to be because the backup generator happened to run out of fuel, did it?
I'm actually reading through the rest of this, right? So impacted power supply, including backup generators, which in turn cause a cascade issue resulting in degraded performance. So basically it sounds like the generators failed. And there was an extended outage where basically they had no juice.
That's not good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
batteries will only last you so long, and you got to have a good generator maintenance plan in that case.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I don't know if any one of you have looked at getting a whole home generator. A lot of them run off of natural gas or propane. Obviously, having a big oil vat on your property probably isn't the best. But I assume not every data center is near natural gas feed, but they're supposed to have fuel available, right? I mean, to be delivered pretty much on demand. So there must have been a mechanical failure where their generators just failed.
Yeah, I mean, to be a NEBS compliant, which I'm sure they're NEBS compliant, PIC compliant data centers, they have to have certain fire suppression, DC battery farms that are backed up by generators. And the generators will sync for a split second between batteries, or when the battery load drops too low, the generator will then kick on it should kick on within 2 minutes or less, so the batteries don't drain. The batteries are only to hold the transition in the load till the generator gets up to operating speeds and power.
I think it's an age-old conversation where it's well, okay, back to what we started with, right? Multi-cloud is the answer, right? If you're going to have your primary in one vendor, have your backup in another, or at least have multiple facilities on the same network, on the same vendor. All of the major software companies, and maybe not even the ones in our space, right? The Netflixes and the Ring doorbells and all these guys, right? They park all of their services in one data center, one region on Amazon, for example. And that region goes down, if you don't have something already set up in another facility, then you're gonna have a problem, right? So, it's just interesting that the big question, right? Why haven't you already done this? It's the same thing we all run with our customers, right? That it costs more money, right, to have your stuff somewhere else, sometimes double the cost, and are they willing to pay? I find it interesting in all the feeds, right? Especially when one of the software vendors in our space has a problem, like the internet explodes and, the keyboard warriors come out. But then in their own stuff, the stuff they're offering to their end customers, their recommendations to their end customers, they're doing the same exact thing. So the question comes down to, would you, the MSP, be willing to pay a premium to be in a high availability mode versus just the regular pricing?
Well, I guess I would look at that as what's your tolerance for, and it all comes back to client service expectations. So if you have a high standard that contractually you have to meet and that you're trying to maintain, then you're going to price and build your services accordingly. Where if you don't have to meet those criteria, then it's just it's a cost and value proposition.
Fair. I mean, I guess everybody has to weigh that themselves, right? I always find it interesting, right? A lot of the options, they never even give you an option for high availability. Sometimes they do, but it's like this much versus the rest, right? So, it's something that, as everybody's reevaluating their contracts, as we hear over the past several weeks, you have to ask these questions, right? Like these are, if you don't ask, aren't you just as responsible if they don't mention it, right? It's a two-way street. So funny enough, since we're on the topic of cloud, here you are. AWS now has a $74 billion annualized run rate.
That's amazing.
That's a lot of money.
When you think about, they started out selling books.
And 40% of that 74 billion is their cloud computing business. So if you were to take the cloud computing business away from their balance sheet, is Amazon still profitable? I don't think so. If they were to spin off AWS as a separate entity, I think Amazon as a whole isn't profitable.
How much of AWS is consumed by Amazon versus outside customers?
Oh, I'm sure just a very small fraction.
You think the greatest percentage is outside people who are using their services?
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I do believe that to be the case. I would say less than 1% of Amazon's computing powers for their own services.
We actually have 2 new Amazon facilities going up within a mile of our office. They bought 2 100-acre lots. They're starting on the one, and then they plan to go after the second one in year 2 or 3.
Yeah. I mean, race to the top. It's funny. I was watching on Apple TV Plus. I know not everybody has that, but it actually has some pretty good stuff on it. The docu-series, but it had Anne Hathaway. It had I forget the name of the actor. It'll come to me in a second. They called We Crashed. It's a story about WeWork. And during the entire WeWork story, the very, very, very eccentric founder, was co-founder of WeWork, said, hey, Amazon's posting a negative all the time. You're basically running at a negative to do hyper growth, right? So he tried to get his co-working space to be valued. Jared Leto, thank you very much, Michelle. That's who it was. He was trying to get his co-working space to be valued as a SaaS company, right? And the argument was, why can't I do that? Well, let me go back to this article for a second. The company reported a $3.8 billion net loss. Net loss. So they're not, even with AWS, they're not profitable because they're in the red, right? So, but, and then they're saying, hey, their growth may be slowing a little bit, right? So my point to you is, no spoilers. I haven't seen the movie yet. It's not a movie. It's a series. So there's several episodes. It'll take you a half day to kind of get through it. It was actually pretty good. So to go check it out. We Crashed on Apple TV Plus. It's like, by the way, you can get it free for 6 months, and it's like $5 a month, like everybody else. But I think about another company in our space, Electric, right? We've talked about them here and then, right? Electric is a New York-based MSP who's valued as a SaaS company. They're on their round D. They're valued at over $1 billion because a lot of their capabilities have been building automation to like, zero touch to IT services experience. So it's very interesting, right? Like they basically took a similar track, right? Hey, software is the business that's exploding. We can get our company to be valued like a software company. We can explode. Well, you don't have to watch the rest of the series. You can go watch it. Didn't work out in WeWork's case. Hopefully that's not what's happening with Electric, but it didn't work out. It kind of imploded, and it's very interesting, right? How that reflects down on the IT services, managed services business, right? Like I don't know who's gone and valued their company recently, but managed services companies are valued on the net, not the gross, right? Software companies are viewed as like a gross recurring revenue, where services companies are viewed on the net. It's completely different valuation. So, I mean, that's why it's so important, right? Best in class for an MSP is like, if you're growing more than 20% or above on the net, you're basically in the top of the MSP class in terms of valuation. But a lot of people are below 10% net growth, right? After interest, depreciation, all that other stuff. And we had Dave Scott on, while we were on the tour, and he brought up Reed Warren from IT Valuations. We'll have him on again soon. He said if you're 10% or below growth for your MSP, you should sell it now. So like, there's like, it's like a moving needle, right? Should you try and make your IT services company a software company? What do you think, Jason? You like development, software development?
Well, I guess I would if I had people that actually thought that way. I mean, we're more infrastructure security guys. So you stick us in front of and I tell people, they ask me, do you do websites? I said, sure, if you like stick figures, I can knock out a website for you, but I don't think that's what you want, because it is a different mindset. Now, there's a lot of complementary things that you can do if you scale in size accordingly.
Yeah, I agree. And so, it's very interesting how we move forward, not to trigger our buddy Keith Nelson, right? But Keith, you probably, if you caught the back end of that conversation, kind of fits you more than anyone else, right? Because you develop software more than you're offering, labor as a service, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
We can't hear Keith, but I'm sure he can hear us.
It's not like Keith to be so quiet.
I know.
You must be dreaming up some comment about the Dallas draft or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I when he gets on here, I'll drop an article on him. I'm sure it'll explode. But in the same token, I was talking. I didn't hear you, Keith. Something's wrong with your microphone, buddy. Once you fix it, jump on. Here's another one that came out of Dell World that I want to point out. Over 50% of our orders last year were through channel partners. Does that sound right to you? Do you agree with that? I feel like Dell has been infamously in the vendor partner, struggle, right? Where their direct sales force kind of just takes over and their channel, always gets run over. Or so the articles say. I mean, I don't know if a year's gone by where, there's not an article by some company out there saying, hey, there's now, seeing a lot more conflict with Dell and the channel partners, which kind of comes back to the larger conversation of the business model, right? Managed services providers are trying to bring their customers to the table, and then your vendor going around you to basically sell directly to the end customer. I mean, Jason, is this still a thing? Is this still happening, or are we crazy?
No, we do have peaks and valleys in that whole Dell channel partner conflict relationship. We've been a Dell partner for 17 years, so we've seen it where they seem to get the channel really well and they grasp it. We don't run into the direct people, and then all of a sudden we're running into it where they're actually selling things for less than we can buy them, even when we start jumping through all the hoops of deal registration. And I've talked with our partner team quite a bit. It's like if you say you embrace the channel, then you don't behave that way. So you guys need to think about what is your true story, and then what's your go-to-market.
I mean, but this isn't
But
just for
you know, you
Dell.
look at one more thing back to Dell, which
Okay.
we've been a partner for years, and I've never had any problems with them. We're Premier and all that. A lot of their stuff that they create internally, they refer back to distribution or the channel. I gave you the example of Boeing when we first started. The Boeing Dell relationship was all set, but because it was a GSA contract with some requirements on using, you know, small business at the time, they purchased all the desktops through us. Boeing set up the credit line, had the cart done, but it shows, I'm sure, because we got credit for it on their system as MSP channel sale. However, it was based on Dell direct relationship. And that happens a lot with Dell.
Oh, but it's not just Dell, right? It could be any of your vendors, right? Right.
Exactly.
Microsoft of more recent, right? You know, with this, the whole transition that they've been forcing through
Right.
their channel, and like every other, you know, we kept, you know, we're going to get to it, guys. Don't worry. The big K, right? But like every other big, you know, manufacturer upstream, you know, like it's almost like the model is built to, you know, really help the guy who's at the top of the food chain, and like you get squeezed in between, and like that doesn't feel good, right? So, you know, is it, you know, how do you protect yourself? Is that even something you're worried about at this point, or is it just it is what it is?
We just work our way through it. I mean, we do hardware as a convenience to our clients, and where we can absolutely make margin, we do. But it's more about, hey, does that customer, do they feel comfortable turning to us and saying, you're our IT provider, let's make this happen. We have one client that has a great deal with Dell that we've never been able to touch. So we just have it in our rhythm with them. We're going to give you guidance on what you should be buying. You buy it, you have it shipped to us. We'll take care of getting the whole thing set up and delivered to you. And that's fine.
I'm much the same way. We make our money off services and development, and hardware is just to keep people out of my accounts. Now, if I make money, that's great. I mean, I'm not opposed to making money, but if I have to put a deal together just to make sure there's not someone else in my account, I'll do that.
Yeah, it's a convenience thing for the client.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole point, right? Hey, yeah, we're one-stop shop. Or I know Keith says, hey, don't put that on your website, because that may hurt you later on. But it's like, hey, I'm trying to roll all of your stuff through here, not because I'm just trying to collect money on it, but because it's easier for me to deliver what you want rather than me having to deal with something that you ordered something wrong. It wasn't the right thing. Now we're just wasting time, even probably now more than today from a supply chain standpoint, because things are taking so much longer to show up. If you order something wrong, it could be months, right? Not weeks, months.
Well, our secret, I mean, we're on the public, but I'll tell you. Yesterday I had a meeting with the union. They have to put out RFPs because it's a quasi-government contract. Of course, no one responded because it didn't ask for a Dell server. It asked for a DHA allocation machine. It asked for a dispatch kiosk. Now, what that is I know what that is. The general market doesn't. So my point is, on a lot of the stuff, I don't relate back down to, like, I don't like to use the word computer server. I give them really site-specific titles. Like some of our big screens are called chalkboards because that's what the union always called them. Now, if you got an RFP or one of my competitors and
I want to
said,
see what the SKU is for the chalkboard.
yeah, that you get an RFP, you get a request for proposal. It says, propose 6 new chalkboards for the dispatch site, which you can't get into because it's secure. You can't answer that because you don't even know what the hell it is. I mean, I've quasi competitors on the phone here, on the call here, and you go like, Would you know how to respond to that?
Well, I got you on the
I'm
line.
shaking my head no.
Before-
And like our check-in system, which is dialogic boards connected to SIP converters, to FSO converters, it says provide a check-in system that can handle up to 48 concurrent calls.
Mhm.
I know what that is because I kind of made it up.
All right, we got a couple other things to talk about, but before we do, since we have Keith on here, I got a special one for you. Here you go, buddy. The Eagles intentionally target Cowboys draft picks. Rumor.
I've
We
always
got
said
that.
the Eagles are the most evil franchise in all sports,
Okay, here we go. The Eagles, not the Cowboys. The Eagles.
and the Cowboys are America's only sports franchise, sports team.
Okay. Pete, do you have anything to offer there?
Alls I can say is if they can get their new draft picks doing what they think, that predictions are that the defense of the Giants is going to return back to the days of Lawrence Taylor and the gang. So they're saying within 2 years, if these guys gel, the Giants will be the #1 defense.
That's a bold statement. It's a
That's what
bold-
that's all of the pro picks on NFL.com and all those guys are making statements like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Fake news.
Yes,
Fake news.
I agree.
Wow.
If our guys would stay off supplements, better living through chemistry, and out of legal trouble, we'd probably have the best defense in the league.
Yeah. Wow, you lost.
Yeah, they have the best defense in court in the league.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. But I couldn't help myself when I'm like, oh, we did. Oh, okay. Well, I guess we can't draft our own people, so we just took a picture of your draft board. Okay.
In between throwing snowballs at Santa Claus.
Again, that was like 1950 something, dude.
Batteries.
Yeah.
Now,
once again.
George, when you're as old as me, 1950s recent history.
I mean, okay. I just want to point out, since Pete, went down this road. See this guy right here? This guy right here, 6'1". This is the guy we drafted. I want to see whose defensive line's better, New York or Philadelphia.
Oh,
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. All right.
It's that NFC East thing, three very staunch competitors here on the sidelines. Armchair, all three armchair quarterbacks here.
Yeah.
I'm an armchair owner. I'd give myself a promotion.
Well, I mean, you can give yourself a promotion.
Yeah.
All right. So for the rest of the call, I mean, since I know where we're going, and just check into this conversation. First, I want to bring out, we probably drove by it before, but the same, PAX 8, our favorite friends over there in Colorado, got $185 million funding round. This is not their first funding round. I believe it's their second funding round. So almost $200 million. And funny enough, led by SoftBank. If you go back and watch We Crashed on Apple TV Plus, SoftBank was a big part of that story, and their Vision Fund. So it's ironic that this is Vision Fund too. I didn't realize it till I saw the We Crash. But so they got $185 million, and they also the week after opened up in Australia and New Zealand. So they just opened up their office down there, and put their team in place down there. So PAX 8 continuing to grow internationally. And then we forgot to talk about this one, but Threat Locker scored $100 million. I think this is their second round. The first, I think, pulled in like 25 million, 24 million, something like that. This is 100 million 12 months later. But basically said they're up 540% growth. Alrighty.
By the way, back to that PAX 8, since Ken's not on the line to defend himself. When I read that, I just figured it was 184 million of it was Ken's bar allocation for the next year.
No. I mean, Ken could never catch up to Rob Ray's bar tab.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
I wasn't talking about sharing tab. I was just talking about his personal tab.
Oh, no. There's no way you can drink that much alcohol. Absolutely not. So, So yeah, so Threat Locker says they're on track to hit that unicorn status later on this year over the $1 billion valuation. It's funny. If you go back to We Crash, I'm going to keep on referencing back. Valuation's only what somebody's, willing, is saying you're worth. That may not actually be your valuation. It's kind of like your house, right? Only as good as somebody's willing to buy, right? So, but yeah, they say they're on track for that. And then for the rest of the call, and of course, we're going to end up with the topic that won't go away, which is, here's the CEO of Now Enable, formerly SolarWinds, MSP, on the Datto Kaseya deal, right? $6.2 billion Datto Kaseya deal. In a nutshell, there's about 6 pages in this interview. You can go see it on crn.com. But in a nutshell, he's saying, hey, and this kind of says it up here, Wall Street recognizes our sandbox, right? And so they've been targeting, this community, right, for investment. And so the big question is, and as we see Pax8, we see, Threat Locker more recently, and obviously now this upcoming Datto Kaseya deal, is that good? Do you find that good? Because at the end of the day, you don't care about the people who made the investments in some of these vendors you're dealing with. You care about your own stuff. So when that stuff happens, do you feel that strengthens the community, or do you feel like that's a bad thing? I would say a lot of people so far, just paraphrasing, say that this is a bad thing, right? That all this money coming in is making terms worse for the MSP and better for the people who own these software companies. There's upstream vendors. What say you?
Well, I would echo some of those same concerns. I think when we have more diversity in the partner base, we get a lot of innovation, and everybody's trying to outdo the other as far as it comes to support and channel management and really get in the community. When you start to shrink that down, you lose some of that focus. I mean, I had this conversation about Microsoft with somebody this morning. They've had their ups and downs, peaks and valleys with the SMB marketplace. I think we're in a valley. We've been there for a while with them. They're just big enough that they don't really have to care. They don't have the same challenges in working in our community. So they do what they want to do. And not so much is it for the benefit of the client, the end client, or the partner that's in the middle trying to help promote and support those solutions.
Okay.
We bring this up when we're talking about legislative action, and I know we all have different opinions on where the legislatures may or may not go as far as regulating our industry. But as I'm talking to mostly California-based legislatures, I look at this and I say it has the possible signs that bigger companies will want to get into our space. What I think that does, and what I tell the legislators the damage is, the bigger companies will either be too big or too expensive to service the clients of the small and medium businesses. And so not only will it affect MSPs in that market, it'll affect the customers they serve. At a time where we probably need more qualified IT providers providing real IT services to smaller businesses that 5 or 6 years ago really didn't need it, especially with the security component, we may be taking that opportunity away from them. I strongly doubt if a Best Buy, who thinks they're an MSP, we can all argue about that later, will go out and provide a reasonable service for a 10-person office. They'll provide responsive service like your printer's jammed, but they won't provide the consultative services that I think the MSP community fills in. However, it does create some noise where people just think we can commoditize the crap out of this and take over the market. And it could have, for a temporary part, the Walmart effect, where it saturates the market, it gets people to move away from the provider they really need to be with, and then leaves them no options. So I think we have to be leery of that.
George, as you're asking that question, I think back to the early days of telephony, because that was my first job out of school, was in the telephony side of the world. And you think about how those services started in the US with AT&T and the Bells and all the independents. And eventually as those properties started to get gobbled up, you did have some degree of innovation, but it was also stifled. And then you got to 1984 when AT&T was broken up, and it just opened the floodgates for all these new services to come.
We just lose internet?
No, I'm here,
Oh.
Pete. We hear you, buddy.
Oh, okay. Totally.
That may not have.
That's Starlink, buddy.
That may not
No,
have.
that's not turned on
services
right now.
fast.
It's the 5G.
That's right. Go back, Jason. Go ahead.
So I was just saying, as you look to 1984 and the judgment that happened against AT&T, which then started to break the Bell system apart, that's what opened the door to innovation and allowed all these companies to come in and compete on a fairly even footing, which a lot of it we can relate to services that we offer today in some shape or form. But when you have it all piled into one giant entity or a couple of entities, the opportunities to innovate or the motivation to innovate, it isn't necessarily there, and it gets focused in the big enterprise sectors versus a lot of the small business environments that we all support.
Okay, and innovation is definitely one thing that everybody says goes down dramatically. When these types of things happen, right? They want to keep things running, they want to keep the lights on, but things really change slowly. Which, if you read all of the Fred comments that have come out since Robin Robbins' last event a few weeks ago until now, or a couple weeks ago, he says, "Oh no, we've dramatically increased capabilities in all of these companies that we've acquired, and that's not going to change with Datto."
Yeah, I think the other thing though that you're seeing and I'm watching really closely is there's a lot of little companies that are PSAs and RMMs and backup and they're starting to sprout out into a little bit more popularity, not necessarily because of innovation, but because people are resistant to that big conglomerate. Where did Darren go? Darren's lurking there today and not talking, but Darren doesn't like to put everything in one bucket, right? He likes to spread it out a little bit because if that conglomerate does, then he's got some bandwidth to move around. So I mean, you look at today's announcement with like Ninja One with Adam Slutskin coming into the mix, right? Ninja One has been on the move for the last 2-3 years. They've been really building up their product, and they could capture a bigger piece as fallout comes between the ConnectWise and the big guys in the Autotasks of the world or the Kaseyas of the world start dropping sync and people get fed up with it. So innovation is one thing, but I think market condition and market shift allows some of these emerging systems to bubble up to the top a little quicker.
And by the way, one of the drawbacks when you get funding now, which may be completely innocent, like you're really going to grow your core business, the first response I see on some of the bitch boards that are out there is they're priming themselves to be that they're going to be gobbled up by the big three. So when a Threat Locker or a Pax8, whose intent may be completely to remain independent and build a better product, as soon as they get those funding rounds, everyone goes, "Oh, is the next stop being gobbled up?" And I think our industry's become paranoid for just cause.
This is the article that Pete referenced. Wasn't going to bring that up today, but hey, here it is. So Adam Slutskin, who started off at CA, I think did like a very small stint at Kaseya, ConnectWise, Lion Guard. Now he's over, I think he's doing Password Boss and Auto Elevate, is now an advisor, chief channel advisor for Ninja One. Used to be called Ninja RMM. So there we go. So Keith, so that's a bad thing. So let me ask you this. Do you, in your contracts, or Jason, in your contracts with your customer as an MSP servicing the end customer, you put in terms that say, hey, if I sell my company, you can get out of your contract? Because it's kind of what the MSP seem to be wanting from the upstream vendor.
Yes, but I'm not, that comes to do with earning source code. So that's a different twist that may not apply to the core services business. We get paid we've talked about that. Get paid to develop code, license it. The code goes in escrow, and if we become insolvent or dissolve, they can void the contract and remove the code from escrow. But that is not based on services. That's a twist to developing site-specific, code. And two of them are requirements of the government, because you can't shut down the ports because Vista went home. I mean, I get it, but I don't think that applies. I don't think my example applies to other people.
Yeah, I would say on our side, our agreements have been fairly easy as far as terms to get in and get out. And I've looked at it intentionally from the standpoint of, we're in this relationship together because it works for both parties. We serve them well as best we can. They appreciate the fact that we serve them well, and they choose to stay with us for many, many years. Our oldest client's been with us for 17 years. So we don't want the contract, because I have actually been on the other side of that. When I worked for CompuServe, I negotiated a lot of partner agreements, and the longer the term, the more attorneys I had to bring into the conversation to get the contract done. And it was just a huge pain in the rear. So we want to be easy to do business with. Now, where we run into terms like NCE or data or those types of things, we have language in our agreement that holds them to those terms they committed to. So 12 months is an example for NCE. So even if we go away, they're still obligated to pay those costs.
Okay, that's interesting. Anyone else? How do you structure things in your managed services agreements to your end customer? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be around forever. Does your business go away with you? Do you sell it? Obviously, a lot of people like to sell their businesses. So, I mean, it's like a counterbalance, right? I mean, if you want your upstream vendor to have favorable terms, then obviously, do you give your customer favorable terms? I mean, if you don't have, in Jason's case, he's like, hey, if I don't have control of the terms, I just pass them down, right? And as long as they're aware, and they're held to it, then I'm not holding the bag. You hope, right? I think.
By the way, Jason skirted on what I think is a great point. An attorney once said to me, you pay attorneys to write great contracts so they could charge you again later to litigate them in court. And so. And that's kind of my feeling on contracts. You need them, I'm sure, but I don't put a lot of grain of salt in it. If someone bigger is going to sue me to get out of their contract and they can afford a better attorney for a longer time, they kind of won. Whether it's the judgment or they've won by just depleting my bank account to where I don't want to fight anymore.
What if your customer is an attorney or a law firm? I mean, it's the same thing, right?
That's why I charge quarterly in advance.
Okay.
That's my contract insurance. That's my simple way to do it. I just charge in advance, and if we part ways, at least they didn't get a pound of my flesh.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it'll be interesting to see how things move forward for the entire industry, right? Because I think, to your point, I think somebody made the point earlier.
From the trailer, it's been that way since I took it on the first.
I think Pete's talking to someone. So I think it'll be interesting because I think somebody already mentioned that now the smaller players in the industry, they're going to be targeted by the people who have money, right? I mean, basically everybody's going to be racing to start populating line items in their chart of things that they don't have. And now all these kind of upstart, smaller companies, they're going to be approached with a lot of money, right? They're going to be approached to, make a decision on whether, that's the right time for them to do something, take investment, sell. And so if you don't like the terms that are out there now, what are you going to do? You're going to go to every vendor and say, hey, I need you to put a clause in here that if you sell, I can get out of my contract. Sure, they're going to try, but it sounds like that's the only thing you can do.
You bring up something which some of these companies are marketing on the fact that they're not part of the big three.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're independent. They're just like, one of the big things is I'm an MSP like you.
Mm-hmm.
We hear that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So when someone buys them and they're no longer an MSP like me, and they're no longer independent, how much does the valuation change because the market perception? And I don't know the answer. I'm not a finance marketing genius guy, but I go, you see it right now with the big K buyout. Data was the non-Kaseya. That was part of their marketing.
Mhm.
And so now people are going, well, now you are the Kaseya.
Literally.
Yeah.
Walter pops in on chat and says, I'm absolutely requesting those in all of my vendor contracts right now.
I cheer him on, and I hope he reports back and tells us how well that worked, because
Well, George, there's something I'll share with you, because all the concerns that we've talked about in the community with Kaseya and Datto and pricing and terms and all those kind of things. I've actually been chatting back and forth with our rep quite a bit about that, about just the concerns that I have personally, but also things I hear in the community. So I managed to get myself into a meeting with some VP in Datto. I don't yet know, but I will get to meet him come Friday. And I'm going to give him my concerns, my 2 cents, and say, as a community, this is where you're eroding our comfort level, and by the lack of clarity on your part, you're causing people to think about other options outside of Datto. So
Great
what are
point.
you going to do about it? And I know Darren and I saw Darren's note. Yeah, Darren, I at least have to be able to go to bed at night and say, yes, I said something about this. And whatever the answer is, it is, and we plan accordingly. But Darren and I talked about it a couple of times last week in Denver.
Yeah. So Darren popped in the chat, said, it's a waste of time. They're going to tell you anything you want to hear.
well, having years ago been a consultant for Ray Lane on acquisitions, one of the problems is the guy you're meeting with maybe is honest that he's been made aware of.
Yeah.
And that's one of the drawbacks is a lot, it's like only half the people are going to stick around.
Well,
I'm going to tell you right now, if half the people leave, oh boy, 6.2 billion, and you lost half of the active customers.
Well, I'm saying on both sides. I'm saying that, and so, all the duplicate positions will be eliminated, and I'm not sure all those decisions are made.
So you're talking about
who's
the
in the?
employees. You're talking about the employees, not the partners. I'm talking about the partners.
That's biggest
employees.
issue.
So my point is, on the need to know basis, I don't know how many of them are in the know, and that's one of the drawbacks. And you really can't talk about, and even if the guy's being completely honest, and I don't think people are always functionally dishonest, their intent may be, we're going to run independent and so on, until the people that put the big amount of money says, I need return. You need to consolidate.
I think Fred made a comment. I forget where. I saw it on all the feeds. He had mentioned at one point, he said, half the MSPs out there probably hate me. And I'm like, that's an interesting realization. If you think half the people out there, half of your buying population don't like you, then that's a problem. It's like the Q rating. You ever heard of the Q rating for like stars and professional athletes and actors and actresses, right? They have a Q rating, like a favorability rating. Like right now in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, I don't know how many people are following that. This was actually brought up in the hearing, right? His Q rating tanked, right? After this whole thing came out. I mean, so Fred knows that his Q rating means half the people don't like him. That's interesting.
Which doesn't mean the other half do like him. There's half of them have expressed a dislike opinion, and there's a good percentage who go, at this point in my life, I don't give a about you. So you go, his approval rating's probably somewhere around 25 to 30.
Oof.
Yeah,
I mean, look at presidential politics, right? Approval rating versus disapproval rating. It's not split. There's also that whole group of people that say, I'm not ready to comment.
Yeah, so I saw some of the chats flying through on that, and I'm not going into this thinking that I'm going to win the day or get them to agree or put on paper, but I feel like I at least have to speak my piece, and then I can say, now I can move on.
Okay.
I said what I needed to say,
You did
Yeah.
what you could.
and
Check.
instead of just folding up my tent and going, I'm telling you why I'm going.
Okay.
And by the way, and I don't know where Jason's feelings are or Pete's or Darren's. Part of it is the new contract structure, which has you worried. My bigger problem is the innovation cycle. And I've seen as these get brought up, the continuous, the momentum that was there before the purchase is not there after the purchase on developing the product. And then I start becoming, I saw someone looking, go, Datto Networking has been coming out with layer 3 switches for 2 years and never came to, was that part of this cycle or not? Was that, and so then I worry about, will I keep getting a product that's upgraded? Autotask and ConnectWise need some facelifts to compete with the new interfaces that are coming out with the newer players, but it seems to die in the bigger company or doesn't become as in partner synced.
Yeah, and that's going to be the other part of the conversation. It's not just terms, but how do you innovate and support in that model? Because I lived through that when CompuServe was purchased by WorldCom. We were rolling out stuff at a blistering pace. Then we hit the WorldCom brick wall, which was 20 feet high and 100 feet deep, and we got nothing done. And it was so frustrating internally to live through that.
Interesting. Well, Walter, who just dropped off, said
This,
he was going into a conversation with his Datto rep. Sounds like, Jason, you're about to talk to somebody there. If you're in a position to share, we'd love to hear the outcomes of those conversations, if nothing other than the same thing that that Darren's saying, a little bit of nothing. But hey, everybody's just trying to keep up to date. Datto, they keep on saying DattoCon's happening. I'm actually trying to get some information so we can continue working around that event, but we'll see.
I think I would bet big money it's going to happen.
DattoCon?
Yeah, definitely. I would say I'm at like 99.9 because they have to. Whether it's the DattoCon you think you're going to, that was the independent, DattoCon before, but I relate it to the HP Aruba merger years ago, where it started as whatever Aruba used to call ArubaCon and ended up on the second day as HPCon. So I would definitely bet it's going to happen.
blue turns to purple and then boom.
Yeah.
His only comment of the day. All right, Creekor, appreciate that, my friend. Well, okay, we'll pick back up on Thursday, 1:00 Eastern time. Again, this is recorded, available. It's going to be available at mspinitiative.com on their sessions. Jason, again, many thanks for letting us borrow your space and borrow your team. I might come back. We'll lift weights in the place next door.
And that gym will be ready for you anytime, and we'll put some beer in the fridge too.
There you go. We're gonna work that beer off. And
No,
thanks for-
maybe we'll have special beer next time, George.
there you go. I'm excited for that.
Yep,
And
to
hey,
fill up them beer mugs.
Hey, we got to fill it up with something, right?
Absolutely.
So appreciate everybody for jumping on today. Again, we do this Thursdays, 1:00 Eastern time. And we post all of this online 24/7, mspinitiative.com. Jason, hopefully we'll catch up with you after your conversation. Pete, see you on the flip side. Everyone else, talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.